Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We are the last panel before happy hour, so I will do my best to drag this out as long as possible.
Yeah.
I want to just pause for a moment, and you heard the introductions of the panel that I'm sitting here with, and I could not be more proud to be sitting next to not only some esteemed colleagues and leaders in their industry and their organizations, but every single one of them I've worked with at over the last 30 years. And you're not just colleagues, you're all my friends. And I appreciate the opportunity to be brought back here to have this discussion and to do it with a group of my friends that I trust and respect very much. So,
Same.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Admiral, I worked at JTF West for a short period of time and out there in the Pacific Northwest, and Pat Flynn. Worked with him started in Nogales, Arizona, almost 3 decades ago, and Ryan in and out over the last few years. So it's been a great opportunity to be here. So I want to start out with a couple of things. And I recently retired in May, and now having the opportunity to see these discussions through the lenses of a retired Govy, seeing it through the lenses of now industry, how that translation occurs. And I'm doing my best to try to help bridge that Govy talk into industry understanding, because there's a lot of things that get lost. And as a former speaker on the stage, I stopped and questioned myself, did I do enough when I was a Govy to express what the requirements are to the people that are out in the audience out in industry that are here to help? So hopefully we can get a little bit of that today. And today's topic is situational awareness. And I want to unpack that a little bit, because so much of what we heard today is founded on situational awareness, the solutions that help resolve that complication of not knowing what's out there. And I would often refer to it as shining a light in all the dark places of our environment. And that is, figuratively speaking, of course, but how do we know what's out there? And then how do we open the aperture of that light to see more? So just kind of want to share a little bit of that. And I think, like most, I wrote notes, but I probably won't use them. There's a couple of things that I would like to draw a distinction between and make sure that we're all speaking the same understanding of what situational awareness is and what domain awareness is, because often they're kind of interchanged. But I want to make sure that we all understand, and as we're sharing our thoughts with you and how you can perceive what we're sharing or what they're sharing with you. Now, situational awareness is more of a present awareness, what is happening right now? What is happening around me right now? Domain awareness is a little bit more of a what's over the hill, from a strategic planning, and situational awareness will eventually evolve into domain awareness, but there's timing differences in it. For example, somebody brought up the TAC devices earlier. That is what is happening right now, that's occurring at this moment, that I can see on my TAC device. The strategic part of that is, how do I plan for the next time that event happens? That's domain awareness. Domain awareness happens on air, land, and sea. And so I want to talk a little bit more, one more level, before I open it up and start asking the questions. So there are domains within domain awareness. The first is surface level. That's land surface and sea surface. Second is subsurface. And each one of these are unique in themselves. The second is subsurface. You have subterranean and you have submarine. Each one of these has complexities, technology, and intelligence that requires specific attention to each one of these. Third is airspace. Anything that's flying over us, around us, or by us. And then fourth, which is often not as tied into what domain awareness or situational awareness is, but it's cyber, it's data, and sensors. So we need to know everything from money services business, what transactions are occurring. That's a domain awareness. That is a situational awareness and how we can counter that. Signals. How we talked about counter drone. How do we mitigate some of these signals that are being omitted for technology that's being used against us? Because we know darn well that the adversary is evaluating every single one of our operational steps so they can overcome and beat us at it. And we need to do that. So let's get started with the questions. So talking about what situational awareness is and what domain awareness is, Admiral, I'd like to know from you first how that relates to your to Coast Guard's daily operations and how those two things matter.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. And I'll start out by addressing what's probably going to come at the end. I care for neither Army nor Navy, so my cheer is for sail. Just saying, right? You're business people, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So in my career, I've had the tremendous opportunity to command at sea, right? To be a captain of a ship. And in those years, at those times, executing those operations, what was most important to me was situational awareness, right? What can I see, hear? What can I detect on radar? And how do I address the threats or the life-saving operations that I'm engaged in a way that's most effective for the nation and safest for my crew? That's what situational awareness is for us, right? How do we use the sensors that are with the operator to achieve the outcome that you expect from your Coast Guard? I've also had the tremendous opportunity in my most recent command to be the director at Joint Interagency Task Force South, where I was responsible for detection and monitoring of all narcotics movements in a 42 million square nautical mile joint operating area, working with 5 of the 6 armed services, 22 other partner nations and allies, and 14 interagency partners. That business is all about domain awareness. So how do we sense, make sense, and provide operational commanders with decision dominance so we can deny the adversary freedom of movement? That is what I mean when I talk about domain awareness. And I'm in the Coast Guard. We have not always done this well. When I was ensign me on my first ship, somewhere, if I'm paid enough, I'll show it to you. There's a picture of me sitting on a big pile of cocaine, which was dumb. You shouldn't do that, but that's what you did when you interdicted cocaine, because it was like the holy grail of operations. Folks would send you to a box somewhere and you'd float around getting the snot kicked out of you in what was invariably Beam 2Cs. And if you stumbled across them and they probably had broken down, well, you could scoop yourself up a narcotics bust. And that was the best we could do at the time. I think that was sort of Coast Guard Operations 1.0. We have come a really, really long way in that time. We are transforming into a digital Coast Guard. In fact, just last month, we issued our digital transformation strategy as part of our Force Design 28 plan. I know we're going to talk about future plans, and I'm excited to talk about that with all of you, because you are just a key component of our success as a Coast Guard and the safety and security and prosperity that we get to deliver to this nation. It's a long answer to your short question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. And Ryan, same for you.
Did I hear you say decision dominance?
I did.
Yeah.
I love that. That's the word of the day.
I'm subtle, Ryan. I'm subtle.
I was thinking in terms of knowledge supremacy, that
Yeah.
you need underpinning that decision dominance, because we say border security is national security, and to us that means knowing and controlling all the things and people that come into the country. And to do that, you have to define and understand what things in a domain do you care about. I don't really bother anymore trying to define domain awareness or situational awareness. It's macro, micro. What do I care about in my world? And then what do I need to know locally to act on something I care about? And that's represented in our data. But you start with the mission in any given area. I mean, I can give you an example. Imagine this story. A Border Patrol Boar Star unit, that's our search and rescue, rescues a guy that fell off a cliff near Rio Grande Valley. They take him by boat to a landing. They get air support above. Afterward, they run his biometrics, and he hits as prior offenses as a smuggler. They fill out a field intelligence report. And if you were following along in that sentence, we traverse 3 physical domains at least: air, maritime, and land. And if you were tracking for any DHS folks, I mean, we went through 7 of the 13 DHS data domains. And domain is used for all kinds of things because it's useful for people. But if you're going to try to make sense of the world and then want to leverage tools like we've been talking about AI, you have to be very precise in what you're modeling. And I kind of take more of a philosophical approach now as an agent, where what is happening in the world that people are perceiving, we're creating data about related to the mission and the outcomes we want to get, how do you actually capture and model that as data? And so that's where I spend a lot of my time and work in, is I'm going to say what used to be a dirty word, but I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to predict it's going to be one of the buzzwords of FY26. Maybe you might hear it during the Army-Navy game, but ontology is how you do that. I became an accidental ontologist because I had to help understand how we model the world and what agents or pilots and officers think about the world in a machine-readable and computable way that in totality gives us the ability to answer questions and make decisions about the threat. And how that actually works is really like this. I said you have the mission. You don't define domain awareness, define context. I care about the context of the air, water, sea, with these things happening. Then the next step is you define your conditions. When this behavior happens, I want to know about it and get that information to the pilots, agents, officers, decision makers, or into another AI model. You can use that to create AI-ready data that supports your decisions, ultimately tied to the outcomes you want to achieve. So that's what I work through in my head. And I guess I didn't give a definition of ontology. Classic ontology is how people think about the nature of the universe. Applied ontology is the set of rules and language, how you model data in a graph format, map to your data in your systems that you can then make computable and machine readable. But the key is lowercase o ontology. I'm talking about capital O ontology. Lowercase o ontology is loosely coupled rules that you can use to solve problems. Web ontology language, the backbone of the internet, allows loose coupling of web pages that, we know the internet can be accurate or not. Formal ontology, if you're going to use this, has to be underpinned by formal computable logic. If you hear in the next 2026, I know the last panelist said AI and cloud were buzzwords of 2025. Ontology, semantics, you're going to hear buzzwords of 2026. And if people come around saying the O word, you want to understand if it's capital O ontology underpinned by formal computable logic or lowercase o. And lowercase o is fine. You can use it to solve the mission, but you won't be interoperable across other agencies if you're not using formal logic. So that's my kind of weird spiel about that.
Oh, I love it. If I may add, I don't know anything about your capital or lowercase o word, but it's intuitive to me as an o word as an operator, right? Like all the data that you can collect is not worthwhile unless you can process, evaluate, disseminate, and visualize it in a way that is usable for the operator, right? Like time is not the ally, time is the enemy. So as much as we can do together, industry and government, to detect and sense make, and again, give that commander the time to outmaneuver the adversary, like that's what we all want. That's what we want together.
Thank you very much. And we will have a translation of this into English in the back of the room when this is over. That was great.
Kind of
Thank
smart,
you very much. All right, so Pat, this question is for you. Having spent time as an agent as well and now serving in industry, how can, from your perspective, how can industry better support DHS in its mission, and what do you think they need to know from you or from DHS officials and leaders and in accomplishing that? So it's translating those requirements to everybody. And then I was having a conversation with Chief, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself for a second, commercial break, Chief Aguilar. And it was based off of a meeting that one of these type of situations that I had watched, and it was my first time after retiring. If I am a government leader and I'm sitting in front of a group of people and I tell everybody I'm hungry, and that's my requirement, and everybody runs out and fixes a meal and does something to resolve that hunger, and everybody comes back and they bring hamburgers and they bring steak and they bring lobster, and then I turn around and say, I wanted Italian food. Why don't I just say I want Italian food? And part of that is teaching the leaders of government to be more specific about what our requirements are. So again, sorry for interrupting myself, me.
Oh, that's
but Pat, so that's kind of the idea. So if there's more that needs to be heard, I think it would be important to share that with leadership, and then what does industry need in return, if that makes sense.
Sure. And thank you for the invitation, Megan, and having me up here. And I want to thank David BeMiller, Chief BeMiller. I did work with him. We were young, and we didn't have gray hair, but we certainly ate some of the same dust. But thank you for your service. You know, you put almost 3 decades of time in, and blood, sweat, and tears in those midnight phone calls. So thank you for doing that. From an industry perspective, and granted, I was a Border Patrol agent, but I also served in the intelligence community with the U.S. Navy and in the reserves. And during that time, I saw a lot of different things. You know, you talk about ontology and situational awareness and surface intel picture, air picture, and ground picture. And there's a lot of elements to that. At the basis of all that, and who built that, was industry. And through those decades of experience and those programs, those very complimentary programs, and there's some doozies out there, we learned a lot. And one of the things that CBP has been doing over the last probably 2 decades, some of the problems are still there, but some of the problems are far more advanced, you know, and I got to take my hats off to Sonny and Jay and Bobo and all those guys. They really have brought a modern way of thinking to the field, and what the folks at PMOD do. But one of the things that we do, and what we're constantly have an insatiable appetite for, is learning about what's next. What we spend an inordinate amount of time doing at GDIT and the others too is we create the ability to accelerate the technology, but we need that accurate picture. So your requirements mentioned is absolutely critical to that. But through that interface, we can help accelerate and bring those things to fruition. We can accentuate the R&D process, you know, that Sunil's trying to do, what the Border Patrol is trying to bring to fruition. Say, and I'll use quantum sensing of fentanyl for an example. How do we bring that to an actionable conclusion? Well, we have accelerators. You know, it could be AI, it could be software development, it could be comms. But we can accelerate that far more quickly. And then also, you know, from a strategic perspective, you know, from a legislative perspective, from a program perspective, we have a defined, well thought out interest on how we can help bring those resources to the operators.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this one's a little bit longer, and I'll probably ask the 3 of you to respond to this one. So, given the U.S. Coast Guard and CBP's evolving operational demands from border surveillance to cargo screening, narcotics, counter-narcotics operations, and national security, what specific capabilities or innovations do you believe industry should prioritize to enhance awareness systems? And then how can private sector partners better align with the U.S. Coast Guard and CBP's domain awareness strategies to ensure long-term mission success? So Ryan, you want to start us off?
Thinking across domains, multi-domain operations, and then thinking about what that means from an industry and government partnership. We're at the point now where threats don't care about domains. They'll traverse our domains and not think one bit about defining it. We have now a need for, call it multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary technology that takes into account multiple skills that combined are going to be need to collect, model, make sense of, transmit, refuse data across domains, across agencies, across lexicons and cultures to create a knowledge base that is actionable to provide knowledge supremacy for operators, analysts, decision makers to use. So I don't want more data to analyze. I want more decisions to make, better decisions and faster. So that's going to take, no one company is going to have the answer. You're seeing it now, I think, that companies are partnering, bringing together multiple competitive advantages across disciplines. You need machine learning. I'm telling you, you need machine reasoning. That's the ontology approach. You need, of course, your cloud network and compute services as well. But really, it all starts with having another new buzzword you're going to hear in 2026, context engineering. You have to be able to translate what we care about tied to our mission based on the outcomes we want and the questions we want to make, that we want to answer, tied to the data that we collect, how those answers are plucked out of the data, which is going to be across multiple missions and systems. The answers are there, and then get it to us so we can do something with it.
Yeah, I would add from a Coast Guard perspective, one, an acknowledgement that we have not, as a service, always operated at our own speed of need. So one of the things that we are doing as part of our Force Design 28 effort is reimagining our acquisition and procurement programs so that we can work with industry to rapidly develop, test, and deploy the technology that our field operators need, right? Our job is to deliver outcomes. And those operational outcomes are really in 3 distinct areas, right? Like our job is to control, secure, and defend the maritime border. Our job is to facilitate maritime commerce, which yields somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.4 trillion of revenue as part of our GDP and 20 million jobs. And our job is to prepare for and respond in crisis so that your Coast Guard can be at their very best at our nation's very worst days. That's it. But everything that you all together provide to us as a government is important, and we are getting ourselves in the business of rapidly developing requirements and assessing what's available on the market and delivering those things to our customers, if I'm sitting at Coast Guard headquarters, and our customers are the operators. I also, I mentioned our digital transformation strategy. We really are focused sort of, right, like there's the data you need for the operating environment, but we really are focused on understanding our own readiness, right? Like there's just, as an operator, there's dynamic tension between what you employ and what you degrade. You can't really generate readiness while you're employing forces. That's the way the Coast Guard operates. We operate all time, real time. We do not have a garrison force. So when we choose to employ forces, that means we're degrading readiness. But we do not have a one-stop shop. The concept is something we're calling a scoreboard, so that we can understand what the threats are. Things like the readiness of our ports alongside any natural disasters that are impending or have passed, along with any illicit trafficking threats through our borders. That in the same space as we're generating information and visualizing that information for commanders on the readiness of our personnel. What's their fatigue levels like? Listen, I can tell you, and I'm sure everyone on this stage can tell you, the number of times they've been awake for days that they just can't remember. But we just don't have a way to measure that and display it to commanders so they can make better choices about how to employ forces and how to ask for help. The readiness of our assets and the integration with our partners. Those are all things that we are working right now to understand, develop requirements, and get them out to you so that you can get back to us with solutions.
Thank you. And you know, I appreciate that. And Pat, I want to get to you on the same question next. But so Ryan's brought up a point that it was resonating with me on. It doesn't matter what we call situational awareness, domain awareness, and things like that. But I think the importance of understanding what we're talking about and a common language in a group of people that we are all in right now is important to define those things to us, regardless what the adversary thinks of those things, because that's what we're here doing. We're communicating our requirements, and if we're, again, the whole idea is we want to be able to use common terms so that when we talk about what situational awareness is, you guys understand that we're talking about things, technology and service systems and things like that address that. And you know, the domain are the longer term type situations. So while tactically they don't necessarily matter because the stuff's going on and we're responding to it daily, right? It's part of what we do. And you know, when the gunfire happens, we all rush to it. But I want to make sure, and this is part of kind of the theme of what I was trying to share in the beginning, is making sure that we all understand what precisely we're trying to share with you, and that we all get used to. And I appreciate the fact that you're saying this is what you're going to hear in 26 and 27, so that you can be prepared and we can all use the Scooby-Doo decipher rings in the back so that we can get ready for what that means to us all, because that common language is important. And like I said, it's making sure that when they say something, that you hear it through the same, with the same intentions. So I appreciate that, and thanks for sharing the future terms as well. Pat, back to you. Do I need to read it again? That was a while ago.
You know, one of the things I think about a lot, and recently, one of our vice presidents, Mike Wagner, and I were up in Bellingham, Washington, and we were running around with HSDF up there. But one of the things that was made very, very present to me is the complex nature of the maritime picture up there. The commercial craft are one thing, the large movers, the ro-ro ships, the tankers and stuff like that, and the Coast Guard operations in the Puget Sound. But what was immensely obvious and complex was the private craft, the recreational craft, which it amounts in some cases thousands of boats running back around. And one of the things that they really, really need a better handle on is, being able to track that, being able to analyze it, being able to eventually detect or understand where it came from, where it was detected, and where potentially it would go. The second thing is how do you jointly prosecute that contact with your Coast Guard brothers and sisters, with DEA, with FBI, with the Mexican government, with the Canadian government, and especially the RCMP. They're on the boats with the Coast Guard currently, working through all that traffic. How do you understand that picture? How do you create the overlays to where you can all work off the same system? One of the things, over the next couple of years, hopefully that we can get a better support mechanism there through, industry interface and working with the resources involved, is being able to put together a system that can accurately detect and share that information on a large scale. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And the data flow, being able to understand that and share it in the appropriate manner is going to be preeminent. And we, they try, but it needs to be done more efficiently, but it needs to be resourced at the appropriate levels.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So, Ryan, I'll start with you on this one. So, as the threat evolves, and again, in, I guess, all four of those categories that I mentioned, the surface, subsurface, air, cyber, data, and signals, how's Border Patrol leadership, CBP leadership, staying ahead of that and do you feel, well, it's just kind of throwing them down, but do you feel that leadership supports those requirements and understands? And then is there anything that we need to do to help secure that understanding?
I certainly think leadership supports anything that helps contribute to what I would call time back to mission or productivity. Try as we might, I think it's going to be very difficult to hire 10,000 officers, agents, or whomever. Staffing is a problem. We have to make every agent, officer, or pilot 10 times more productive. And you're only going to do that by that interdisciplinary approach to modeling data, making sense of it, and being able to transmit it at scale. But that crosses authorities, boundaries, cultures. I don't know if there is a common language, because, I mean, it's so hard to use English and then try to use English to label data about things we care about. There's too many different words for the same thing, too many different definitions for the same word. Every agency gets to choose its own lexicon. An example I've used in the past, I could say something, Chief, that you're going to think sounds silly. Buffalo, 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 buffalo. And that sentence is both a homonym and a homophone, and is actually a legitimate sentence. You can Google it. Now, how would you explain that to a computer? What if you didn't know any of that? Now, if I gave you more context, or maybe if you had the right context, you would know I was talking about an intimidating buffalo that was intimidating other intimidating buffaloes from the city of Buffalo with common language. So that's where I became, nobody joins the Border Patrol because they want to be a philosopher or a knowledge engineer, but because, we were too stubborn to not try and too dumb not to know we couldn't do it, just accidentally figured out that you have to model data precisely using a formal standard like ontology, get with smart people to do the mappings, the network engineers to connect things, the bosses to support the acquisition, and then the smart companies to work together in multiple domains as industry and disciplines across the physical domains, and then get it to the different mission domains in real time.
Gosh.
It's the best answer I've ever heard to any question in my life.
Buffalo, buffalo, buffalo.
Are you a
you were tapping
Bills
out.
fan?
I who isn't?
No.
All right, so I'll just go down the line then. Pat, how do you, similar question, or same question, but, as far as industry? Kind of the future state.
Let me bring up something that's critically important and needs addressed probably in the near term, is communications infrastructure. I've been in Rio Grande Valley, McAllen recently, in Nogales, and been up north. And what continues to be an issue, and you heard the B2 up here earlier talking about it, is the communication infrastructure is not adequate. And it's dynamic. The terrain is very, very, very harsh in some cases, up and down and undulating, but the communications infrastructure and how we support it, how we deploy it, is not adequate. And in some cases, it's dangerous on where the agents and officers tend to need to go to interdict. I think the proper attention needs to be focused there. I think industry is more than capable of addressing that. But still to this day, you're still taking your radio out and holding it above your head and making those calls. And those devices, those TAC devices are awesome, by the way. I wish I had that back in the day. But it still needs to communicate. It needs that backhaul. And I think if we were to fix anything CBP specific, and think about Rescue 21 over there, and the communications issues on that program also is very important. If I could fix anything, I would fix that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's safety. That's huge. Whether you're out in the field, but that connection back to command, back to folks that are going to respond to you when you're in need. Believe us, we've all been there. It's never good to not get an answer back on that call for help. So Admiral, how about how is Coast Guard preparing for the adversaries? And I think it was mentioned earlier on one of the panels, but they're evolving at a pace. They don't have the policy and the restrictions and unfettered funding, and they're much more capable of adapting at a pace that that we struggle with, and not because we want to struggle, it's because it's the government. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the vote of confidence. And I think in the past, I might have pushed back and said, hey, pump the brakes. We have trouble defining requirements and making decisions about acquisitions and fielding capability. But our Commandant has made it clear that it is his priority to transform our Coast Guard so that we really can enable an agile, capable, ready workforce. And ready for what? Ready for everything. We certainly are talking about what a future contingency might look like, and to ensure that we have communications in a denied, degraded, intermittent, or limited environment. We really haven't conceived of those possibilities, not during my career. I mean, we certainly were limited in many, many ways, but that's because we were limited by our imaginations of what we needed on ships and aircraft. This is a very, very different thing. So we really are orienting the entire acquisition workforce toward generating speed to outcome in a way that I've just have never seen before. And that's not to say we're undermining, acquisition law or requirements or policy or being irresponsible in any way. That's not your Coast Guard, and everyone in here knows it. It does mean we're being purposeful and responsive in a way that's achieving results. Just a few weeks ago, my current role is as a senior advisor to the Commandant on multiple different issues, and I identified a need for top secret communication gear in multiple places around the Coast Guard. And we have a new team, they're called Raptor. And I don't remember what Raptor stands for. They really do have a bird on their symbol, so that's how I know where they are in the building. But it really is a crew of senior leaders who were put together just to rapidly develop, procure, and deploy capability to the field. And it was, I am not kidding, 72 hours from the time I told them what I needed, where to get it, and how much it would cost, between that moment and my staff working with them and the money request and relationships with folks in the intelligence community to get that gear, it was 72 hours. That is neck-breaking speed for the federal government writ large, but certainly for a military force in the United States Coast Guard. Absolutely appropriate deployment of those personnel and financial resources to get leaders what they've needed, I don't know, for a couple of decades, right? That's where we are as a service. I've never seen a senior leadership team, and I have the great benefit of being part of it. I've never seen a senior leadership team better galvanized toward an outcome than who we are today as a service. And we are galvanized around this Force Design 28 plan, and that includes the digital revolution that I described earlier and our acquisition reform.
Yeah.
Well,
go
can
ahead.
I piggyback? Just one other thing, and just to pile on to my communications input earlier. The situational awareness, the domain awareness, the maritime, the MDA problems, lots of data, right? That communications infrastructure, it's got to ride on it. So, and it really, really needs to be fixed. And like Mike Wagner says in the back of the room, I'm going to foot stomp that real hard, because that really needs to be addressed in the near term.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I think we've all seen, an evolution in our leadership and understanding of why this is so important. And it's tragedy that really does translate that into action. And in order for us to stay ahead of it, we've seen our, all of the leaders recognize that fact. It's hard. We talk about generations of people and how do we communicate with Gen, Z and Gen, millennials and all those different generations. But stopping and recognizing the fact that there are subtle differences, that, there's a lot to learn from each other, a lot to learn from the different generations, and that we've seen our leaders grow from that. And it's just part of self-awareness And I'm glad to see that, or hear that the Commandant, and I know that the Commissioner, Commissioner Scott, has taken tremendous strides in consolidating offices and ensuring that the best comes from efficiency and effectiveness. So it's a good thing to see. So I would like to open it up to any questions. I am not buying the first rounds, if that's the first question, but is there anybody that has any questions for the panel? Yes, ma'am.
Angelique Irvin again. I have a quick question, and I'd love to hear from each of you. What is the number one problem that's unsolved? What is your number one problem that's unsolved that you would like to see solved in 2026? Especially if it relates to ISR.
Yeah, we do not have an integrated system of fixed terrestrial, crewed and uncrewed surface, subsurface, and aviation ISR platforms combined with commercial or government space-based ISR platforms that give us a cogent, complete, persistent domain awareness in the way that anyone would expect is rational or acceptable. We need those things, and I talked about pedding those things out, right? The ability to process, evaluate, disseminate, and visualize those data feeds for our commanders, and alongside an open architecture that allows us to iterate the currency of that technology.
What she said with the communications infrastructure.
Okay.
But I don't know if you solve that in 26. To answer your, yes, but we're talking multiple years, but that's a pretty complex ask, and we can get there. But it's going to be a 10-year process at least. Hopefully.
Would you like the caveman answer or the egghead answer?
I do too.
Ryan, you got a fan. You got a fan.
I mean, the biggest problem is still obvious. There's folks that say the cure for cancer is in our data. I mean, we are data rich and analysis poor. I think CBP probably has more data than every other law enforcement agency in the world combined. And so the problem is, how do you structure or provide loosely coupled standards and processes so everybody can talk the way they talk, but they resolve to a universal standard of entities and what they are? I mean, I guess that was nerdy. If you want the next level nerdy, what really problem is we have is we need what's called an extensible bill of materials. Basically a driver's license for every data that tracks your data from when it's born, its origination, to where it goes, so that you know the quality and provenance of it in near real time. So then when it's acted upon and goes through the systems and you want to make decisions, until we have that, maybe this will never be a buzzword, but it's called paradata or parametric telemetry data. That problem gets solved. You will be whoever country that solves that problem first will achieve knowledge supremacy at speed and scale and win the AI war. So that's my opinion on that.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? We lost half the room.
Yeah,
I don't blame them.
they're lined up. Yeah. But can I say something real quick? You know, I'm a father of a daughter. She's getting married May 9th.
Congratulations.
And, yeah, thank you. But that's not why I say that. And I hope you don't mind I say this, but I want to. The Admiral's going to be she's going to be a 3-star soon. And guess what? So
That's pending confirmation.
okay, but she's, you know, you don't see that very often, and she's a mom. And she has small ones, and she's done it on both sides. And when she told me that in the ready room, it gave me some information or some motivation that you can do it, and you should be very proud of that. And thank you.
Thank you.
Was there a question in the back room, or?
Yes, hi, thank you. Nadia Aman from CBP. Excuse me, Admiral, could you speak to the history of your C5R efforts that have recently started in the Coast Guard?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the question. You know, I think like many agencies in government, our historic approach to our C5 systems has been like building the monster, right? And all of a sudden you wonder how you have Frankenstein. We've gone through multiple transformations or strategies over the last decade or so. But beginning with the issuance of our Force Design 28 strategic plan and the implementation plan that followed in the spring to summertime. You'll forgive me, I don't know the dates I was operating. But that really solidified the approach, the requirements, and the enabling functions that we know we need to enable our workforce. I'm pretty sure that those strategic documents are available. But then we did the thing you always need to do when you have a need for rapid transformation. We hired like the smartest guy in the Coast Guard to lead it. His name's John Hickey. He's a two-star like me. He just left command of our Great Lakes District. And as usual with Rear Admiral Hickey, he is moving at a breakneck speed and has surrounded himself with just the greatest minds in the Coast Guard who understand operations, who understand technology, communication, need, requirements, and fiscal policy to get after it and get after it quick. So I'm not sure if that's a great answer, but John Hickey is my answer. Yeah.
All right, I think that, anybody else? I think that about brings us to our time. I really appreciate this conversation. I think this helped kind of help bridge some of those layers of what things mean to us, what things mean to them, and how industry can support that. So, and you all, thank you for the ones that stayed here to listen to that. It really means a lot to us because talking to an empty room would have been funny. Yeah. But anyways, the panel, I respect you all. Thank you very much for everything that you provided for us today. And
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thanks for including us.
Let's give this panel a big round of applause. That was great.